Change doesn't just test your systems, it tests you. As a leader, every disruption acts like a mirror. It shows you your blind spots. It shows you your fears, your capacity to grow or to shrink. If you've ever felt like change was unraveling you as opposed to evolving you, trust me, you are not alone. And in this video, I'm breaking down exactly how change affects leadership and 3 ways to reshape how you identify with change to rise without losing yourself. Let's talk about it. First, let's get real. Let's talk about the real emotional cost of leading through change. And I'm talking about modern day change, right? Where you've got stacked deliverables, stacked priorities, and you're not just leading one type of change. Even the very best leaders that I have seen, that I work with, are still human. So there's still imposter syndrome that might show up. When you feel uncertainty, when things are ambiguous, when you can't give your team all the right answers, you might feel incompetent. You might feel like you're a failure. And feeling this pressure that you need to have it all together could be driving disconnection between you and those that you're responsible for leading. And so often, there are these elements that go unseen for those of us leading big change. Our decision fatigue, our emotional isolation, and sometimes even role confusion. That emotional toll that change has on you and your people, I think is the least often spoken about. But I think it's one of the biggest drivers to your change efforts being successful or being a failure. So let's dive into 3 ways to help you reshape the way that you identify with change and leading through it. The first way is to think about yourself as a signal translator. People are not always just looking at you for answers. They're looking at you to make meaning of the emotional landscape. That means they're looking for time and space to emote, to share those feelings, and for you to acknowledge them. This is going to help them feel seen and heard and understood. That's your role as a leader through change. You stop being the person with the plan, but rather start being the person holding space for the people you rely upon to execute the plan. The second part that I want to talk about is your inner narrative getting louder and louder, especially as the complexity, the uncertainty, and the ambiguity might grow as you're leading through such change complexity. When we're going through change, it stirs up so much of our stuff, so much of our things, which is why I think it's such an incredible time for all of us today to grow, to learn more about ourselves. But really, it can stir up really difficult times, right? Times where you might have failed, where you might have fallen down. You might start having this narrative of, if people resist this, it means that they don't trust me. I really believe the way that you move through change, the way that you lead your people through change, in large part is built upon the story or the narrative that you're telling yourself, or the story or narrative that your people are telling themselves. You know, we do something within my company, Change Enthusiasm Global, called a cultural discovery, and we actually employ world-class journalists, and we go in and interview leaders across the organization, and it helps us to understand what are the narratives, what are the stories that people are telling themselves as it relates to change readiness and change agility. It's a lot more than just the data, right, which we also garner as well, but it's more so higher level, what are the stories that are driving the behaviors of people when moving through change. It's so powerful. And so it's important for you as a leader to understand, what are the narratives that I hold? When I've been, tasked to lead really complex change, when I get promoted, when I'm the one responsible for leading all of this AI integration, for ensuring that my team is on board, for ensuring that all of the innovation that we're delivering still needs to stay on task, what stories do I tell myself? What do I wake up with? What do I go to bed with? Get in tune with what those are, if there's opportunity to change or modify them to better enable your success. Remember, disruption invites the opportunity for you to rewrite your script if you're still working off one that's no longer serving you. The third way that I want you to think about your identity with change and when you lead it is that every change gives you the opportunity to evolve or to remain stuck. Like I was just mentioning, change brings up all of our stuff. It invites all this discomfort. It invites really difficult emotions. All these things are signals pointing you to ways that you can improve and become better. So make sure you take advantage of that opportunity, right? When you get into the really challenging times, how can you learn from it? How can you become better? How can you grow so that when you're faced it again, I remember I've been there and my goodness, I made a fool of myself. But this is what I learned and I will not make that fool again. And there's also opportunity for you as a leader to role model growth and the discomfort that's experienced when you're growing, right? And it's so inspiring, and it's so inspiring for a leader, an individual who's responsible for a team and their progress, to admit when they've made a mistake, to admit when there is failure, to admit, oh my goodness, I went into this executive review and I was so uncomfortable. But I learned so much about myself and had such success afterwards, right? So get comfortable with sharing about your growth, sharing how you're continuing to evolve. And I assure you, it's going to inspire your people to want to get some of that growth as well. And now I want to talk about the power and the importance of not just leading your people through change, but leading yourself through it first. You know, in my work, I get to meet with executives and leaders and individuals all over the world in so many different industries. And so often when I'm sitting with a group of dozens or hundreds of leaders and they know that I'm going to be talking about, how to move through change, how to lead through change, there is an assumption that I'm bringing them some tactics and some tips on what they can give to their people. I have to give this to my people. What are you going to give me that I'm going to give to my people? And they're always surprised when I start talking about things they need to fill in themselves, their own emotional self-awareness, their own authenticity. And it's about nurturing them. It always throws them for a whirlwind because they assume, okay, change leadership, it's given to my people. What do I give to my people? What your people need is a better inspired, rested, and informed you. So you need to lead yourself first before you can stand up and really lead your people in the most powerful way. This starts with being in tune with your own emotions, right? Whether that's through journaling, because I know you can't talk about all your emotional energy with your people, but whether that's journaling, whether that's with a peer, with a mentor, maybe with a partner or a spouse, this is about finding a place to be safe and to be honest about how you're dealing with a change. And one of the best ways is to find ways to practice what I call micro courage. And I call it that because it's an opportunity to be vulnerable with your people. And I know, because I work with them, there are so many leaders and execs who say vulnerability is not for me. Vulnerability is weakness. Vulnerability is a sign of weakness. There's no way that I will be weak in front of my people. There is strength in showing vulnerability and you being honest with what's driving discomfort, difficult emotions in you, and allowing your people to see your humanity. That creates this conduit for their emotional energy to flow. And they recognize you're right there with them. You're working with this team as one team, moving forward, evolving together. So there is strength in being vulnerable. And I'll tell you that because if you even have the thought of sharing vulnerability, sharing your fears, it probably gets you nervous and anxious, right? And that means it takes courage for you to overcome that. There's a fear in it. And so it's great value when you can embrace sharing that vulnerability. So try little ways to have that micro courage, to talk about something that you've been vulnerable to share. And the last thing that I'll say is to normalize not knowing. Meaning when you don't have an answer, when you don't know it, be honest and say you don't know it, right? I don't know that, but I will work to find it. Thank you for raising that to my attention. I'll go and find that information. And as soon as I do, you'll be the first to know, right? Normalize this so that you don't have people on the team making things up or speaking out of turn or just saying something because they feel pressure to always have the answers. Normalize the not knowing. And I don't want to leave you without facing a truth that probably is in the back of your mind right now as you watch this video, especially as I'm inviting you as a leader into vulnerability and talking about emotion and sharing emotion and your fears and your frustrations. I think that over the past many, many decades, and I think it still exists in cultures and perhaps even in your own, the higher you go in a hierarchy, the higher you go up a chain, the less that you can share any emotion that isn't positive or perceived as positive. Because you have to be the one leading the charge, leading your people. You have to bring all the enthusiasm, the positivity, and the joy, and all the hope. You can't show fear. If you're showing fear, what are your people going to do? I want to bust that paradigm. I want you to let that go. This is my invitation for you to do so. When you can share your fears, your frustrations, your angers, invite vulnerability into the room, your people again will embrace your humanity, will see that you too are human, and it will create this authentic connection. It will nurture trust within your teams. Please let go of this idea, this ridiculous myth that if you're really high in an organization, you can't share what might be deemed a more negatively perceived emotion. As actually recently I was listening to a Jeff Bezos interview, and Jeff Bezos is who he is. I don't know what your feelings are about him, but this part I commend him for saying. He says he's starting to share about his fears and his frustrations with his exec team. And he hadn't done it pretty much all of his career, but he's starting to see the benefit of doing so. And he didn't recognize it before, but now that he's starting to talk about his fears, he's finding that trust is getting nurtured even more so in his exec team. So there's great value in that. And I was actually happy to hear him say that. So if you don't take it from me, take it from Jeff. And not Jeff, take it from me. That said, something for free that's actually really cool that I'm super excited about. So we just created something called a change growth type assessment. It's assessing how you show up as a leader of change. So it's a short quiz, and you're gonna find out more about you and how you're showing up leading change and leading your people. So click the link below, take the assessment. Once you land on your type, you're gonna get some tools, you're gonna get some guidance, some tips to help you in the way that you're showing up today. And it's something fun you can share across socials as well. Completely for free, just click the link below. And until we meet again, till you see this face again, I want you to keep leading with vulnerability. Keep sharing that empathy, keep holding space and feeling and allowing others around you to do the same. And above all else, keep authentically rocking.